Welcome to the SWADE Pro Show podcast. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization that they represent. The content is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listener discretion is advised.
It's good times. What else you want to do on a Friday night, you know?
That's right.
Dig into history. I love it.
Take a nap. Anyway, okay.
Welcome back to the SWADE Pro Show. I'm your host, Stacy, and this is actually a very exciting episode. I'm looking forward to hearing part 2 of what we did last time, the Mountain Meadow Massacre. So, again, I have Amy with me. Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello. I am Amy Jones. People refer to me as Arkansas Amy. I am a Arkansas historian, and I love to tell the story of Arkansans who came before us and how we got to where we are now in Arkansas history. So
If someone wanted to find out more about what your history and all that stuff, how can they do that?
I am on Facebook under Arkansas Amy, all one word. Also, you can email me at Arkansas Amy, and it's Arkansas spelled out and then A-M-Y. Don't be spelling Amy with no I, because nobody really does that. Okay. And so it's arkansasamy@outlook.com. You could email me anything. I get questions all the time. People come up and say, hey, do you know about this? Or somebody told me something about this. Do you know anything? And I'd love to find it out. So
awesome. So this is the part 2. We haven't done a part 2 like we were discussing.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this, thank you so much. I'd like to know what you think. And to be honest, and with everybody listening or watching, I don't know anything about what you're about to say, but I'm eagerly looking forward to it, because this is the Arkansas connection to the Mountain Meadow Massacre. Yes. And if you don't know what we're talking about, the first episode, I'll link that below.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes, I think we'll give a little recap of what we are talking about.
Very good.
So we're talking about a wagon train. It was the Baker Fletcher wagon train. I did that last time. Fletcher wagon train that left from Harrison, Arkansas, and going to California. And so there was a lot of families involved, roughly 25 to 30 families and different family lines that were involved in this. It was a large wagon train. And in fact, I have some facts here. They had over 900 heads of cattle with them, even. Okay, goodness. So imagine the wagon trains and then cattle.
That's why the last time we talked about this, I was like, how come it takes so long to get there? Well, if you think about 900 cattle, and I know you're using them along the way, if you will. So, but still, that's a lot.
Yes, and
you're moving at the speed of like a snail.
Yes, and we talked last time that a lot of people, now they weren't all directly from Arkansas. Some were from Missouri, or they might have met up with them maybe a midway through going towards California, because this Fletcher, Fancher, he was a trail boss, and he did this same run several times. Oh. Okay. The Baker part of this was just the folks. He's the one that got everybody together in Arkansas and said, hey, if you want to go to California. Now, this wasn't cheap. This was expensive. People put their whole life savings into this.
Goodness.
And so when they were California bound, the wagons, they had 120 to 150 people, men, women, and children, as many as 900 heads of cattle, other animals, and they had tried to have pregnant animals. Imagine that. You want to get your cattle pregnant, so by the time you get to California, you have 2. Yeah. And they took all their valuables in the world. They took family heirlooms, and they had to be a little bit wealthy in some state to even pay to go on the wagon train. Right. So these were not poor people. These were not just didn't have anywhere else to go. They had farms, they had homes, they had businesses that they left to go start a new life in California. So the story is that, of course, they went and they camped at the Mountain Massacre. 120 of them were killed, and only 17 were saved, and these were children under 6 years old. Right. So that's the story we're going to talk about. And we talked about it in detail a lot before. And so a small recap is they left in about April of 1857. And by the time they got to Salt Lake City, they wanted to get supplies, and they wanted to, it was a Utah territory at the time, not a state. And they wanted to get some more supplies before they went on to California. Well, the population of Salt Lake City was in turmoil of its own.
Right.
We were right in the middle of what they call the Mormon War, which was 1857 to 1858. And what it basically was the people in the Utah territory, the Mormons, were at war with the federal government. And they claimed that they were not even part of the United States, that they could do whatever they wanted to do. But that's not true. They were Americans, just like the people in this wagon train were Americans. So they told them, you can't travel through Utah without a pass. Well, they said, well, we didn't know. Last time we came through here, we didn't have to have a pass. We're sorry. And they're like, oh, it's okay. It's all right. We're going to let you go this time. And they were real nice to them, but they wouldn't sell them supplies. And they kept saying, we don't have supplies to sell you. Mm-hmm. And the reason they did that is because the leader of the Mormon church, Brigham Young, had said, we are at war with America. Mm-hmm. So you have to stock up your supplies. You don't sell to these immigrants, is what they call them, going through here. You don't sell your stuff because we're at war and you have to save it for our own town. So they were very discouraged, but they said, well, you can go, there's a place real close, you can go camp, and it has great fields and great meadows for your cattle. And so they actually told them where to go, out to the Mountain Meadows area. It was a beautiful area. It still is a beautiful area. It is kind of a field or a not a canyon, but an open area with mountains all around. Okay, and it's still beautiful.
Do you want to say something about what you said you didn't want to forget?
Oh, well, we're going to get to that.
Okay,
we're going to get to that.
Make sure.
Yeah, so we will get to that because I do want to talk about, we'll get that. That's part of the end of the story.
I love it.
But anyway, the first of the story, they get there. There was Paiute Indians in the area, and the Mormons had developed a relationship with them and traded with them and everything. However, they decided to blame this whole situation on the Paiute Indians, which that's not true. So, so as they came through town and they got to the meadows, there was all kinds of rumors being flying around, and people were saying, oh, these immigrants from Arkansas came and they were horrible, and they stole our stuff out of our houses, and they attacked our women and children and all this stuff. They did all these horrible things. They poisoned a spring. We're going to talk a little more about that. They said they fed a poisoned cattle to Indians, tried to kill them. So the Mormons were rallying up the Indians to say these were horrible people. But actually, here's the story. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon religion, was killed in Independence Jail in Missouri. And the Mormons felt like they needed to atone blood for his killing. So when they found out that these folks were from Arkansas, which is close to Missouri, which is close to Illinois, so the whole thing, so they spread rumors among the Mormons that said, you know what, when they were in Salt Lake City, they bragged that they were the ones that killed Joseph Smith. And that didn't happen either.
Yeah, exactly.
They probably didn't even know who Joseph Smith was. Didn't even care. That wasn't even what they were doing there. But they said that to the Mormon families and got them all riled up. And the whole thing was Brigham Young and his militia knew that the federal government was coming and was going to stop them from not obeying the president's orders, okay? So they also spread a rumor that said, these immigrants also said, we're going to California, and when we get there, we're going to turn around and form a militia and come back and kill all you Mormons, okay? Well, they didn't say that either. But that got all the Mormon families uprooted. So the leaders of the Mormon church got the Mormons upset, got the Indians upset, and you've got these innocent people out in this meadow just thinking they're just resting their cattle and that kind of thing. They did take their wagon trains up towards a spring that was in the meadow there. They corralled them a little bit at the beginning, but when the attack started, they actually put them in a circle, like you see an old-fashioned circle wagon train. They actually put them in a circle.
Oh, yeah.
And they took chains and chained their wheels together to try to keep everybody.
Hey, you. If you're enjoying this, why not give us a like and consider following us wherever you get your podcast? Sharing is caring, and we would love your feedback, so drop us a line. Now, back to the SWADE Pro Show.
Inside this circle. The attacks on these folks happened from September 7th to September 11th. So, there was 120 people that died on September 11th, but before that, there was a handful, maybe a dozen people that had died because they had these attacks. They had flaming arrows come through and set some of the things on fire. They were also trying to make them think this was the Indians doing to you, but a lot of it was Mormons. They would hide in the bushes and they might shoot and that kind of thing. One little girl whose name was Baker, who actually was saved, was sitting in her dad's lap, and he was here the second half of the chief of the wagon train, and they're just having dinner inside their wagon circle, and a shot came and shot her ear off.
Oh, goodness.
So, this is Elizabeth Baker. So things were happening, and then they were trying to get to the spring to get water, because you got 120 people, you need a lot of water, and every person that would go to the spring to get water, they would shoot him and kill him. So out at this Mountain Meadow Massacre site now, there is memorials, different kinds of memorials, and I'll tell you about different ones, but one of them, there is a small graveyard that are actually graves that were dug by these travelers for the first people that were killed. So imagine you're huddled up in there, you have no water, you just sent out 3 or 4 people, they've been shot to get water, but you're gonna bury them, and they did bury them and put stones up and said this is who died here, not having any idea that they were all gonna die. So it got to a really bad situation when they had no water and anything, and so on September 11th, a man named John D. Lee, a Mormon leader of the militia, came riding out with a white flag and said, "Hi guys, I know this has been horrible, and I know the Indians have done all this to you." Well, the Indians had even made a comment, "We're not messing with these guys. They have long guns and they know how to shoot, and they got lots of ammo." And they had shot a lot of their ammo in retaliation in these, from the 7th to the 11th in these attacks.
Which is traditional Arkansas people.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They got long guns and ammo.
They were dry, and they had everything they owned. Imagine you have every family heirloom, every piece of jewelry, every watch, everything. It estimated, that was very interesting too. I did find where it said that in all of the cattle and the equipment and everything, it was about $42,000 in that day and age.
Yeah, that's a lot for that day.
That's a lot.
That's 1800s.
Yes, 1857, they were taking everything they owned. So the value of everything they had came to about $42,000. That's a lot of money. So these, like I said, these were not poor people.
Right.
And so here comes John D. Lee. He comes riding out. And there's all kinds of skepticism as, was this ordered by Brigham Young? Brigham Young said, oh, he didn't. He said that John D. Lee just lost his mind. And anyway, he became a scapegoat. We'll talk about him in a minute. But he comes out and he says, look, the Indians have surrounded you and they want to kill you. So if you will offer to leave everything you own, all your firearms, all your stuff. And they said, well, we're out of ammo anyway. Leave everything you have. We will work with you and we will escort you. The militia of Mormons will escort you away from the Indians, get you to Cedar City, which was about 40 miles away. And they said, but you're going to have to walk. So everybody's got to walk. So all the men go in one area. The men have to walk up front, and the women and the children will walk behind. There was wounded because not everybody who was shot getting water died. So there was a wagon full of wounded people. And so then they took the small children, and they said, if you have a small child, put them in this wagon too. They can ride in this wagon, but the rest is going to have to walk. There was 35 children under the age of 18. Oh, goodness. 17 of them were saved because they were supposedly under the age that they could speak. Yes, or could tell the story. Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
So, so they start walking. These people people say, well, why would they do this? Well, you haven't had water for days.
Right.
You have no choice. And it looks like
you're out of ammo.
The Mormons have rode in to save today. Aren't they sweet? Aren't they nice? Right. They got to walk in, and they only got about 1.5 miles away from their wagons when first the Mormons man turned on one of the militia members, yelled, "Mormons, do your duty." And the Mormon men shot all of the men. One of the surviving girls happened to be being carried by Mr. Baker. It wasn't his child, but he picked her up and was carrying her. And she said she remembers falling as he was shot. Goodness. And so then all the women and children who are a little bit behind the men hear this and start screaming. And the women and children, it's been found out now that they didn't get a quick death with a shot. They were bludgeoned to death.
Goodness.
They were either shot with arrows or they were...
I wonder why.
Well, because probably it was a lot of ammo.
Oh, it is.
Basically, it was probably just logistics. Yeah. And so they shot the men because the men would fight them back more. And the women were beat and their brains beat out. That's horrible. And in front of their children.
Right.
And their children in front of them. Right. You know. And so... So who did this? The Mormon militia were white men. Some of the white men had put paint on their face and tried to dress like Indians or put hoods over their heads so that they wouldn't see they were white men because they were still trying to sell the story this was all Indians. And then there was a handful, not even 50. I mean, there was probably more than 100 people that did this, but not even a small percentage of them were actually the Paiute Indians. But there was some because they had got them involved and got them mad and said, you tried to poison our spring, you tried to feed us this poison beef, all this kind of stuff. So, but the Indians are like, we didn't know we were killing everybody. You know, they just thought they were coming out to talk to them. So, and as they marched the people, it says that there was people in the bushes beside them that stood up and just started firing. So it wasn't like they turned and fired them, and it wasn't like the men who were shot saw them coming or anything like that.
Yeah, it was an ambush.
It was an ambush. So, this happened. 120 people died, 17 children saved. Actually, the story goes there was 18 children saved. But once they looked in the wagon and saw one girl was screaming and crying for her mama, they said, "How old are you?" And before she could even say how old she was, they shot her point blank in front of the other children because they said if she can tell me who her mama is, then she can tell the story.
Right. That's horrible.
So why would a Mormon do this, okay? Why would they do this? They were taught by Brigham Young that you are actually doing your Christian duty by doing this.
Yeah, but that's like shooting a kid, like point blank.
Point blank.
How do you do that?
In front of the other survivors, and the other survivors, some of them remember that.
That's horrible.
They said there was 18 of us, now there's 17. And so their Christian duty, you got to go back to why they think this is their Christian duty. And that's because Joseph Smith was killed. So again, blood for blood, vengeance is mine. You know, that's what they're saying, retaliation. But they said because these people killed Joseph Smith, they can't go to heaven. And the only way they might be able to go to heaven is if we shed their blood in retaliation for what they did.
Right.
Well, these folks in the wagon train, they didn't do this. This is not the people that did this, but they were using them like that. And also, we talked a little bit on the first episode about Mormons and how many wives they had at the time and different levels of heaven and all that. So they referred to anybody who wasn't a Mormon as a Gentile, just as Jews refer to people as Gentiles. And so they were like, the only way a Gentile can even get to heaven anyway, the lowest ring of heaven is to, you know, be a good person or something like that. But if they kill somebody, we have to shed their blood or they don't have any chance to go to heaven. So Brigham Young actually preached, his preaching circuit actually preached and said, if you kill someone in our Mormon war, if you kill a soldier or you kill someone who's done this, you're doing them a favor. You're doing your Christian duty. You're walking in the love of God. Can you imagine?
All right.
So the aftermath of this is, I told last time about how they took after it was over, it got to be nightfall because it started in the afternoon. Right. So it got to be nightfall. And first thing they did was take everybody's clothes off.
This is on September 11th, right?
September 11th. As soon as everyone was dead, they took everybody's clothes off. They took all the valuables and the wagons and all the oxen. They took everything. Right. They just plundered everything. and that would have been the Mormons. The Indians didn't receive any of that, okay? All the Mormons received all of the plunder, and they threw them in. They had big wagons full of like women's dresses and bed sheets and anything you can imagine. They took everything, and they left these people dead and naked on the ground. And some accounts say, well, they tried to build some shallow graves, but they were really too busy taking everything and putting it in the wagons, so that didn't work. Most of them laid there.
Yeah, that wasn't a priority.
No. And 18 months later, when the federal government showed up, I'll give you the details of what they found. They really did just lay there. So, but that night, well, they're all tired. They've been killing all day. So they go to John D. Smith's house, who I believe at the time he had 6 wives. By the time he was executed about 20 years later, he only had 3 wives. But they took all the children, the 17 children, and all the people that had just been involved in the killing, and went to celebrate their victory. And the wives made them dinner, and it says they celebrated into the night their victory that they had overcome.
How do you celebrate a victory of just unarmed people that were just ambushed? That's not a victory. That's coward.
Yes, and that's the definition of a massacre.
Right.
Is killing people that do not have a way to defend themselves. Yeah. So, it has been deemed the Mountain Meadow Massacre because it is a massacre.
Right.
And we talked a little bit last time about the September reference.
Right.
This was the biggest massacre of American people on American soil until September 11th of the Twin Towers that we all know.
Right.
So, anyway, so imagine you show up and you've got men who are washing off war paint because they dress like Indians. You've got people with blood on them because they were bludgeoning to death these women and children. And you've got a wagon full of children crying, infants and children that can't communicate. Yeah. So the Mormon women came in, took over them, fed them, got the kids ready, put them to bed, that kind of thing. And they spent the night at John D. Lee's house.
The 17 survivors.
The 17 kids, yes. And but the next day, someone came and they started farming them out to different Mormon families. Mm-hmm. But again, the narrative that the Mormons set out was not that. Because first off, like I always say, I say it, everything I say, there's no Facebook. So in 1857, this gets out slowly. Mm-hmm. But it does get out because that's a lot of people, and people start asking where they're at, they're supposed to be here, they're supposed to have checked in, where they're doing. So it starts getting out slowly, but the narrative that the Mormons say for the next 100 years is we didn't have anything to do with it. This was all Indians. We didn't have anything to do with it. They said we weren't there. It didn't happen. It was all the Paiute Indians, and the Indians are the ones who stole the children. And they said that these children went and lived with the Indian families and all this. That didn't happen at all. None of these children went and lived with Indian families. None of them. So so that's kind of what happened. And there's more detail, like I said in the first one, that about what happened. But I want to talk about how this all ended up, okay? So this is September 1857. In 1859, a federal Indian superintendent, his name was Dr. Jacob Fondley, and a U.S. Marshal, William Roger, they were actually accompanying a payroll clerk who was taking a payroll from the federal government to someplace in California, to a fort in California. And so they said, well, while you're going through that way, investigate this Mountain Meadow Massacre that we've heard a little bit about in the last 18 months, okay?
So, hold on. So, if he's to investigate, it sounds to me like they just did this on the road. They didn't even like try to get him off somewhere. They did it where everybody would see it. They did it right there.
Oh, yes. Because, well, let me go back to that then. Because this was the trail, okay?
Right.
So other wagon trains came through.
Right.
And would say, we saw the carnage.
Right, the bodies.
We saw the bodies. We saw one wagon train recorded that they couldn't even go that way because the wolf packs were so heavy.
I bet.
And
That's
that
horrible.
the wolves had food for,
Right.
several months.
Right.
And they would howl all night long, and the wolves just came in and camped there. And so other wagon trains that came behind them, they said we just would see skeletons or we would see pieces of bones.
Right.
And again, they'd be like, what happened here? What happened here?
Exactly, because it's a whole, collection,
it's right there. And so,
Goodness.
so you get to Salt Lake City or you get to California, you say, hey, I saw this. What happened there? And they go, well, we heard the Indians did it, or the Mormons said the Indians,
Right.
And so that's what the story was going around. Well, so when it got to the president and the Indian superintendent, he's like, you need to find out if the Indians really did this, because if the Paiute tribe did this, then we need to take care of that. Well, so that's kind of how it was. It wasn't in the newspaper. It wasn't reported. It wasn't nothing like that. And then you've got people in Arkansas going, wait a minute, my sister and her family were supposed to check in.
Right.
Where are they at?
Right.
So they're starting to think. So then it kind of got around that this did happen and these children were spared, but they were living with Indians. And so the Arkansas legislative and government got highly involved. Senators and governor and everything got very involved. And the relatives back here in Arkansas said, well, we don't care if they're living with the Indians or not. We want our children. Where's our relatives? So actually the Army was under the impression they were going to go out to the tribe and rescue these children. Okay. And the story, the lie that the Mormons did in such intense, they really got together and spun the narrative so that everyone would tell the same story.
Right.
And and they were very offended when people didn't believe their story, because they would say, oh, you're just against us. You're just trying to hurt the Mormons, and they were like, this don't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
And they were like, no, this is exactly what happened. And so when you get back to the Indian superintendent, Jacob, he was supposed to round these children up from the Indians or wherever they were from and take them back to their families. So word comes out that that's what they're about to do. And so the Mormons start scattering, okay? And so I've got a list, and I'm just going to tell you a few of the names. You've got like John Carvin Miller. He was born in 1851, so he was very young when this happened.
Goodness,
and
6.
He was the first boy between 7 and 8, but see, if they were small for their age, they didn't know how old they were.
Exactly.
So that's probably what saved him. He says that his mother was killed, and that he actually pulled an arrow out of her back trying to save her. But he also saw his 2 brothers and his older than him that also died. And he saw his sister Nancy, Mary, and Martha. They all died. And so when the Mormons rounded them up, they told the children, you can, if you want to tell the story, that's fine. But what we're going to tell is the Mormons who rounded them up said, oh, I found Calvin, and for a horse worth $70, I traded with the Indians to get him away from the Indians. See, that's not true. That didn't happen. But they have each one of the children they have listed that they rounded up. They tell how much they gave an Indian. Like one Mary Miller, they gave 3 blankets, and they gave 200 pounds of flour to get her back, okay? So that kept their narrative up.
Right.
When truthfully, they were staying with Mormon families.
Right.
So, but they didn't want the federal government coming out here and messing with the Indians, because the Indians were like, we didn't do this.
Exactly.
We saw the white guys do it, And so they had to cover their tracks. So they did gather these children up, and they took them to a little town 12 miles outside of Salt Lake City is where they met this Indian superintendent and the marshal. And so they say when they saw these children, they had gathered up 17 children, or they'd actually had 16 at the time. They gathered up 16 children, and they said the children were scarcely clothed. Many of them were malnourished. Some of them were very sick.
Wow.
And because imagine if you've been preached this, that these people wronged you, enough that you would kill their parents, then how are you going to love that child when
That's
it comes
what I was
to your
wondering
house?
the whole time with this thing. It's like, that didn't make any sense to me.
Didn't make any sense. So it says that they had to be fixed up before he could even travel with them. And so he took like a week and a half to feed them well and to bring doctors in and all of this and make sure they all had proper clothing, because they didn't even have proper clothing at the time. And these infants had now grown into it's 18 months later, they'd grown into like 2-year-olds and that kind of thing. But some of the infants didn't want to leave their Mormon parents because they had no idea. They didn't know better. And they would cry and that sort of thing. There was one child that was almost taken all the way into California. It had been a Mormon family that could not have children. And so they were very excited to get this infant, and they had raised this infant, and that child was happy and healthy. And they said, is there no way we can keep this infant? And they said, no, bring that child to us.
Right.
So 16 of them were there when they first got there, but they waited too for that 17th child to be delivered. And they said that the Mormon mother wailed and cried when she gave them their baby, because she couldn't have babies, and here she had this baby. So, there's all, the human aspect is in all of this, all of it.
It's all wrong, though.
It's horrible. It's all wrong. And, but the different names of these children are some names that you might still, I wanted to say some of their last names, because there may be names that people are listening and say, hey, I know somebody named that. Dunlap is a name. That's an Arkansas name. There was a Dunlap families. There was a Tackett family. There was Millers. There was the Bakers. There was... of course, the Fanchers, they brought their children. The Huff family, Rebecca Dunlap. Now, Dunlap is somebody I want to tell about that I did say I would say something about these sisters. Rebecca, Louisa, and Sarah Dunlap. They were from Madison County, Arkansas. They were the daughter of Jesse and Mary Dunlap. They were 13, 14, and 15. And these three sisters, for some reason, were saved. We kind of think maybe to care for the children, okay? But for some reason they were saved, and they were actually taken by one of the Mormon men that was there. He took them straight to his house. They're older. They're older. Right. Maybe they were taken for wives. Who knows?
Probably, who knows?
I actually in researching this, I've had people say, oh, they just wanted those girls for wives. Right. Well, here's an example. Right. So those three were kept in solitude and did not leave their farm for a whole winter. Because
they know the whole story.
They knew the whole story. Right. And they were together, and they were sisters. And so Sarah Dunlap, who was only 13 at the time, she did grow up and told the story a lot and wrote articles and that sort of thing.
Good.
And but they didn't even try to say, nobody even tried to lie and say they were with the Indians, because everybody knew he had taken them straight to his house, right. Which we don't even want to speculate what nasty was going on there. But anyway, but so they did retrieve them too. All of the children that could speak said they had never stayed with Indians. They said, we've never lived with Indians. Right. But here's their story. They couldn't say they were with Mormon families because the Indians were there. So I'm gonna read just a little bit of this letter from this Fonny, F-O-R-N-E-Y. I'm not good with names, y'all. The superintendent of Indian Affairs. He wrote this letter in August of 1859, and it just says, the 17 little children, all that I can learn of them, that they were taken from the massacre by Mr. Hamilton, and that's the guy who actually returned them. They were taken to John D. Lee's house and then taken to other homes in wagons, either that same evening or the following morning. The children were sold out to different persons in Cedar City, Harmony, and Painter's Creek. So the Mormons paid for these children. Mm-hmm. They not only sold these children to Mormon families, they also sold every one of these possessions. I told you that they had all this stuff. Right. They sold the dresses. They sold and all of this was stuff that they could buy.
And that was a lot of money. If you remember, it was $42,000.
Yes, and so Bills are now in my possession from different individuals saying that they want their payment back from the government if they're going to give these children back. I cannot conceive to repay for these children. Below is a list of children recovered by me and brought to this city, 15 of whom are now en route to Arkansas, and 2 are designated to give evidence. Okay. The 2 oldest in this 17 group were, well, the 2 oldest males, not these girls. Okay. But the 2 oldest males, they said, we're going to leave you here because there's going to be a federal trial, and we think you could testify to help convict. So again, there's so many facets to this story. I mean, if you want to research this, I've been researching this for years, and if you want to research it, you can go down all kinds of different trails.
I bet.
But once the Mormons saw all this was hitting the fan, okay, they were like, oh, well, we're going to do a church investigation. We're going to investigate this ourselves. We're going to bring whoever did this, we're going to bring them on trial in front of our ecclesiastic?
How do you say that? I don't know that.
I don't know that. church board.
Ecclesiastic.
That's what I was trying to say. Ecclesiastic trial is what they said they were going to have. They said, you can go ahead and have your federal trial. That's fine, but we're going to have this, okay? So all of a sudden, Mormons started turning on each other. Mm-hmm. They were like, oh, I wasn't there, but I know he was there. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there, but he told me this story about he was there.
Believe?
Oh, it was just all over. So, but the 2 children that were left that didn't go straight back to Arkansas were left in the care of federal soldiers at a fort to be cared for until the trial so that they could speak on.
Don't you know they were scared? All those other people going? Yeah.
They were scared. And these are their brothers and sisters. Right. Again, they didn't know who was whose brother and sister.
And they probably still don't know who to trust.
They don't know who to trust. And unless they, like if you had an infant brother and sister that you didn't see for 18 months, you might not recognize that child.
Goodness gracious.
So they weren't even sure who was related to who, really. And they were still trying to find out. So they were all huddled together, and he said that out of all the 17 children, Felix Martin Jones did not appear on this list, but he inserted Jane Baker is listed. So his list was not completed, but he wanted to put it in. Then he put, I remain your very respectful and your obedient servant, the superintendent of Indian Affairs. So very formal. But this was his letter back to the federal government about how he was going to get them together. So anyway, that happened, but to jump ahead of the narrative of the Mormons, I think this needs to be investigated a little bit more. Yep. In my research, you can go on the Library of Congress. You can find any old book. See, isn't that cool? Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would never touch this book with my hand, but I got to print it out. It's called the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Who was guilty of the crime? The subjects discussed and important documents is an address delivered to the 12th Ward of the Assembly Hall in Salt Lake City on October 26, 1884. So this is 27 years or something.
That's
after
what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah. And this was an address that that this elder of the Mormon Church gave. Now, I think we touched on a little bit. We told a little bit about how the Mormons write down everything. Mm-hmm. We have scribes that write down everything. They're behind Ancestry.com. They're, everything is scribed. So this pamphlet was reported by John Irving, but the address was given by Elder Charles W. Penrose. And so he talks he introduces and says he's going to tell about this, but he talks about how it's not fair that every place that a Mormon goes to try to tell the story of Jesus Christ, the story of the Mountain Meadows comes up.
Right.
And they're just tired of being talked about. They're tired of being asked that. So let's all just pretend a minute. And if I had a man's voice, I'd read this like a man. But let's just pretend we were in this hall. You're in this hall. It's 1884. You're a Mormon, or you're hearing their side of the story. Right. And he says, the immigrants. Now remember, those are the folks in the wagon train. As they went through Salt Lake City, the immigrants boasted to the people as they passed through the settlements as they were going to California, where they intended to get a company up and return to the people in the South, and when they arrived in Salt Lake City, they would kill them all as they returned. It is related that on the way, when going through small settlements, it was a large company of 120 to 150 people. It's difficult to estimate, but they robbed, hen roosted. I guess that's where you keep the hen house, and passed through the streets while flipping off the heads of chickens with their whip tongs. Now, I had to look up whip tongs. Whip tongs is the braided part of a whip at the end of a whip.
Wow.
So they're saying they not only robbed the hen house, they drove through the middle of town and took their whips and cut the heads off of chickens. Now, how precise is that, okay?
That's pretty detailed.
Yeah. At one place, it is related they poisoned the springs so that people who partook of the water died in consequence thereof. Still further, it is said that they poisoned beef and gave it to Indians, and several Indians died after its effect. And at another place, they caught an Indian, tied him to a wagon wheel, and whipped him severely. There are the stories which were told concerning these immigrants. Whether they're true or false, I'm unable to say. But they were the stories that told and concerning these people, and people believed them. The Indians came much more enraged than the Mormons did. As this company traveled further and further south, the rage of the Indians increased. On the way, they met Jacob Hamlin and asked him. Now remember, Hamlin, it's Hamblin. Remember,
Hamlin,
Hamlin. He's one of the guys who rounded up the children in the end and brought them in. Okay. Right. It wasn't Jacob, it was actually his brother Albert, but they were brothers. So anyway, and they asked him, as a resident of this territory, a man well acquainted with this country, who has been among the Indians for a great deal, which was the best place to camp in a certain region. So they're saying that the wagon train asked him what was the best place. Mm-hmm. And they did. And he said that they should go to the Mountain Meadows in the north part, that it was the best land. So the truth of it is when they got to Salt Lake City and were so coldly treated by the Mormons, they didn't understand, because these were white Christian people like they were, and they didn't understand. Right. So they did ask them questions. They said, what should we do to make friends with the Indians? Where's the best place to camp? Where can we get the supplies if we can't get them from you? They had all kinds of questions. Mm-hmm. And the Mormons claimed, we helped them, we talked to them, and we tried to help them, is what he's saying. But he's saying that it's not fair that they are getting told that they did something wrong.
Right.
So poor people. Anyway, they did do something wrong, and that is exactly what happened.
Right.
But I'm looking at all my different notes. I always over-prepare completely.
I love it.
So I want to talk about a little bit. The children did return to Arkansas. Many of them raised up with families in Arkansas. As you can imagine, a lot of times they wanted to keep things very quiet and not really talk about this. It was just in polite society. You didn't say, oh, guess what? My parents got killed in the meadow, you know. Right.
It's not something you brag about.
No, you don't brag about it. But there was an article. Let me find it. I got it here. I know I do. There was an article in the newspaper that I believe it was the Sarah Dunlap who said it. Yes, it was. Okay, she is a statement from one of the few survivors. Now, this article came out in the Daily Gazette, which would have been probably the Arkansas Gazette at that time. She is... they reprinted this article, and she had put it in the Danville Independent published newspaper, but they reprinted it, and that often happened. So she said, she wasn't the Dunlap lady. She said, I'm the daughter of Peter Huff. My mother's maiden name was Sarah Brown, the daughter of Alexander Brown of Tennessee. I was born in Benton County in Arkansas in 1853. My father started to move from this country in the spring of 1857 and was in the ill-fated train bound for California. I was part of the children saved. I was 4 years old. I can recollect my father and my mother very well, as they had innocent of what happened to them, our travels on the roads, and etc. I recall passing through Salt Lake City and being treated so coldly. I am recalled that we stayed in a small prairie. One morning before I woke up by the firing of guns and learned our camp was under attack. And so the men dug a ditch around our camp and tried to fortitude it by chaining our wagons together, and that's where we sat for days. But as we ran out of food and water, we were very excited to see a friendly white flag come and say that they would protect us and take us on to Cedar City. Well, that's when the Mormons showed up.
Right.
So she's saying it as a child. She said that as time went on, she can remember actually being at a Mormon's home, or being at John D. Lee's home, and seeing one of his wives wear her mother's dress.
Oh.
And she said, I had to sleep in the bed with the sheets that my mother had made for our bed. And she said, because everything, and she said, when I said, I remember this was my mother's cook pot is one of the things. And they said, you're lying. You're just a liar. And she said she would be punished severely for bringing it up.
That's horrible. Could you imagine seeing some other person after all this happened wearing, Could you imagine?
Well, it was bedclothes, clothing, and many other things, and even jewelry that had been her mother's, because it's one thing to kill them. You're shedding their blood, but to rob them,
everything. Tell
me where that's even fits into your twisted thing. It doesn't say
everything.
We plunder all of it. Yeah, it doesn't say that. So she gave a whole thing, and she gave a whole account of it. She was 23 at the time. They said they kept all the children as separate as they could so that they wouldn't compare stories.
Right.
And it says the scenes of this massacre are so terrible, they are stamped on my mind, notwithstanding that I was so young, but I will never forget.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the trauma on the level of what it went to.
She was 4, right?
She was 4 when it happened. And there's a lot of accounts that say some of these children were older than 6, but they looked young.
Right.
And so when you're trying to, you go over there, you're not looking at birth certificates. So they were just randomly trying to see who they would save.
Right.
So, okay. Then, so we get down to years afterwards. The church decides that they are going to offer John D. Lee up as a scapegoat and say, we kind of have to say that, he went and got the Indians, and he did this with the Indians, but no other Mormon man did, which doesn't even make sense.
He was just the guy behind it.
He was the guy behind it. So what he really was I forget his rank, but he had a corporal rank or something in the Mormon militia. And I don't mean to, I get so passionate about this history. I do.
Right.
So when it comes to, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Hitler's birthday either. I don't want to know a bunch about these men, okay? Right. And so I researched to a certain point, then I'm like, I can't know that much about them, or they start sitting in my living room, and we can't do that.
Yeah,
so anyway,
it's almost like glorifying them a little bit.
Yes, you're glorifying them. But John D. Lee says his story is that he was told not by Brigham Young, but by Brigham Young's second in command. Brigham Young was out of the territory at the time, okay? And actually came back in, and the following Sunday said, well, what do you mean all this happened to these people? I told everyone don't touch them. I told everyone give them safe passage.
Right.
And that's not what happened either. But so I believe he did give the order. Mm-hmm. The order was given to his second command. Then it was given to John D. Lee, who was just a worker guy. He was just the guy carrying it out. He wasn't the big brains of the operation. He did have relations with the Paiute Indians because they were trading and stuff, so he knew them. But he also started spreading the story. And he's the one that got the Indians all round up. He's the one that helped spread the story to the Mormons, got everybody all fired up, got the militia together. He did all the organizing of it. And in a twist of the whole thing is he had a trial in 1875. He was shot and killed, I want to say March 23rd of 1875. He was executed, and he was ordered to be executed by a federal order, not the order of the church. Okay, but the church was like, "Oh yeah, we support you." We're, all of a sudden now we're all friends with the federal.
They turned on him.
Yes, and so he was taken to. During the trial, he was kept at a fort not far away, and he was guarded. And so I'm going to tell you the story a little bit of the day he died, and then we're going to get to the monument that's out there now. The day he died, he had been in prison. His wives had been allowed to see him. He did actually write letters personally to each of his wives. He only had 3 wives left at that time. They had children. I'm not even sure how many children, but they had a whole bunch of children amongst them all. And so they say they came to get him, and it was ruled that he would be shot on the site of the massacre. That's where the firing squad would shoot him.
Wow.
So they actually drove him out there, and they said it was a 3.5-hour trip, and they drove him out there in a closed carriage where nobody could see who was in it, and they said he didn't speak at all on the way out there. And when they got out there, they got to they call it the siege site is what they're calling it. And that's where the wagons were actually put together in a circle. And so they say they took them to the siege site and took their own wagons and put them in a circle around there. And then it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and they brought his casket out, and they put his casket 25 feet from the wagons. And that said that Mormons and all kinds of people, there was hundreds of people in attendance to watch this. Okay.
Wow, I was wondering about that.
Yes. So the troops were keeping people out of the firing line, but they did say they were closer than they should have really been to the firing line. And so there was a photographer there. And so finally Lee decides he's going to say something. They said,
I was wondering about that.
They said, "Do you have anything to say?" And he said, "I need to speak to that photographer." Well, the photographer said, "I don't want to talk to you." And they said, "No, go over and talk." And they talked him into going over and talking to him. And he said, "Please take a photo." And you can find this photo on the internet. It's like a panoramic shot. It's big and long, and you can see the wagons in the back, and you can see the firing squad. And it said, "Please take a picture and make sure each one of my 3 wives gets a picture so that they do know that I'm dead."
Okay.
So he said, "My last request is that every one of my 3 wives gets a picture." And so, which is kind of weird, but
it is
narcissistic, little weird. Anyway, but so they walk him over to his casket and make him sit on the edge of it. And because when you're going to shoot a guy, you want him to fall in the box. You don't have to pick him up. And then about 10:15, between 10:15 and 10:30 is when they shot him. But the last words that he said, because after he started talking about that, he did start saying all kinds of things. And I took this from another news article that was reprinted over and over in different papers. But this is from the San Francisco Chronicle on Saturday, March 24th, 1877. I'm sorry, 1877 is the year he died. I had that wrong. So they said, "Shot dead. Execution of John D. Lee at Mountain Meadows. He is blotted forever from life's pages." Well, no, he's not, but that's okay. But that was the headline of this newspaper. Said, "Upon the scene of his infamous crime, he was executed." So they executed him at the scene of where he did the crime. "He remained cool and collected to the end, dying with an appeal to God for mercy. He also denounced the prophet Brigham Young. He said, "I am a follower of Jesus Christ, and I believe the teaching of Jesus Christ, but I no longer believe the teaching of Brigham Young." He said that as some of his last words. He also said he still maintained that the mission of the massacre at the Meadows Mountains was a merciful and Christian act. Merciful and Christian act.
Right.
To the very end, the man had that in his brain.
Goodness gracious.
And so the rest of the article just tells a lot of the story. It tells about his wives and
I don't understand. He didn't turn nobody in or say it was an order from.
Well, the Mormon church didn't back him up. Yes, he tried to say. He tried to say that, but the Mormons were like, "Oh no, we just think he's crazy."
Of course, but
he worked his own, and I know at this day and age there would have been a lot more people, but back then, what are you going to do? Take the whole territory and because that could have caused. You got to remember there was tensions between the United States and Mormons anyway.
Well, I mean, you have the Paiute Indians who are saying the same thing. Hey, we didn't do it,
but they were not. Yeah. As far as the federal government in the late 1800s, they weren't listening to them either. You know,
I mean, you got to think the John Lee guy.
Yeah.
He, if I'm remembering this correctly, my memory's bad. He was there doing this.
He did this. He's the one who had the white flag. Yes,
you're right. So he could not only could he say, hey, I had the white flag or whatever. I also know the people who did this.
Yes.
Go talk to them. The church is lying.
Yes. Well, they all turned against him. They shunned him.
Even the people that did it, I guess.
Yeah, all the people that did it. They shunned his wife and his kids. And on a personal note, I will tell you, I personally am very good friends with someone, and I won't say a lot about who she is, but she, when I first researched this, even back in 2015, I'm telling her, I'm learning about this Meadow Mountain Massacre. I didn't know that much about it, She said, my middle name is Lee.
Ooh.
And I said, what? And she said, John D. Lee is my great-great-grandfather. And it just gives you chills.
You're right, it does. Stops you in your place.
Yes. And she said that his wives were shunned after his execution, and it says that in the paper. Right. And that in a weird twist of fate, these women took their children and moved to Arkansas.
You're talking about the Lee women.
The Lee women.
The three wives.
Yes. So there's John D. Lee, and she's one of the ancestors here in Arkansas.
Wow.
Yeah. And she said it's just not something my family talks about.
Right. I wouldn't either.
Yeah. So.
And she can't help how she was born, who she's,
No.
Right.
But that's how close it really is. That's why you can't look at this as this is a movie. This is not. These are actual Arkansans that have blood. She's an Arkansan, now. And so I also have had the privilege over the years to meet the great-great-granddaughter of Mr. Baker.
Oh.
Because the Bakers still have relatives in Harrison, Arkansas, because the twist of that is I think he had like 4 sons and daughters. He had lots of kids. He took most of his children except for his youngest son and his wife because they owned a very large farm in Harrison, Arkansas. So she was supposed to sell the farm and then join them in California.
Right.
And when you think about it, 25 bloodlines were destroyed that day.
Right.
How many possibilities were killed there?
Right.
How many stories, how many presidents, how many people, doctors that were going to cure cancer were killed there? Right. Are there ancestors or legacy? This is not just 120 people. It doesn't stop like that.
Right.
So the Bakers still have, at that time, they said this farm is still in the family. Good. She never sold the farm because she was so devastated. So we still do have Bakers and Dunlaps, and some of these people are relatives of the children that came back, and some of them are people that stayed here. Yeah. It was very common in that time that if your brother and your sister-in-law or something were going to California, they were going to go out there and establish, and you were going to stay in Arkansas and make money on the farm or whatever, then the whole family would join. So there was planned for more people from that area to join. So there's a graveyard in Harrison, Arkansas that has a lot of these people buried in it, a lot of the relatives, but there's also a monument there that lists the names of the people that were from there who were killed in the massacre. Right. Now, back to the Mountain Meadow, though. Remember, this is Mormon territory. This is still Mormon. I mean, it's a state, but it's still a lot of Mormons.
Right.
So for years, back to this really really awesome Indian superintendent guy. I didn't tell you what happened when he went out there. When he went out there with the marshal, 18 months later, he said the carnage was horrifying. And this was in a letter. He said skulls and bones. He said bushes still had scalps of women, because a lot of the women they did scalp even if they weren't Indians, because they were trying to make it look like Indians did it. So they said, one of his letters says, I walked past a bush with a long bit of women's hair, dark women's hair, with a hair bow still attached.
Oh,
18
goodness.
months later. Can you
imagine the chills you'd get seeing that?
Yes, and the bones laying around. So once they got there, 18 months later, the bones are bleached by the sun. They're scattered. And so the Army did come in and gather as much as they could from everywhere and bury them. And so they are buried there, or but there was no identifying who was who. They were just buried there. So then the Army also took boulders, and there's maybe 5 feet tall stack of rocks, okay? And this was going to be a monument to what happened here.
Okay.
Well, from 1860s to up to like 1913, that monument was destroyed almost every time it was built up. The Mormons would come out, or it's said that the Mormons came out and destroyed the monument because they were trying to just act like it didn't happen.
Right.
So in 1813, people did try to get together and actually get money together to build a monument. So that there was another one built. It was also destroyed.
Right.
So it was early in the years 2000, maybe 2003, when finally the church said, okay, guys, this did happen. They admitted it. Because they didn't admit it. I mean, Mormons didn't talk about it. It was not something. They admitted it. And so I found an article with the relatives from the wagon train, the relatives and the relatives from the survivors, even some of the Paiute Indian tribes, and Mormon, the Mormon organization, all got together and built proper memorials.
Good.
And so now it is maintained by the Utah State Parks.
Good.
And you can go out to different parts of it. You go out to where they say the siege area, and there's a big metal gate, and you walk in the metal gate and you can read a plaque that has the names of everybody, but you're just in this middle of this valley, and there's mountains all over. It's a beautiful place. I bet so. Just beautiful. And then if you go up to another part of that same area, they have a monument just to the men and just to the women. And so the men's side is overlooking in there, and it says all the men's names and where they're from, and the women and children also. So, if you're ever in Utah, it's a lot to see. But I really tried to dig into, why are we still hiding this 133 years later? Why are we still not? And every state teaches their state's history, okay? Not as well as Texas, but boy, Texas is proud of their state history. Those kids take it like 2 years in a row. Arkansas takes it like a semester in 8th grade. That's it, Arkansas history.
Right.
But every state teaches their kids in school some of their history. However, Utah children were not being taught anything. And there's people that grew up in Utah that have no idea what this is. Wow. And as they find out, they feel like their state has lied to them.
Right. But yeah,
just totally hit it. But
no different than the Mormons did as far as that goes.
Well, it's because the Mormons are so ingrained in the politics, and they're everywhere, and that's where they run their businesses. I mean, that is very much a Mormon state still.
Right.
And so that's not a surprise. However, I just don't believe that's how it should be.
I don't either, because honestly, if you think about it, they've already admitted it happened.
Yes.
So why are you hiding it?
It happened. And so, we think about, I'm a Judeo-Christian, and we all know our Bible stories and all that, and we can all tell you about David and Goliath and parting of the Red Sea and all that kind of stuff. That's history. Is what that is.
Right.
And we remember because it's told over and over and over for generations and generations. So this has to be told. This has to be remembered.
Right.
Because like I said, those were possibilities that died that day.
Right.
Not
We
just
don't know. We don't know either way.
We don't even know. I mean, those families probably were going to have more children. They were going to have more. They were going to thrive in California. California could have been a whole nother state, And
yeah, if you think about it, like that 120 people that died, think about how they would have multiplied.
Yes.
To this day.
Right. And so I kind of made a summary, and I kind of want to close with a summary. It just gives people think, because this is not the end. If you want to research this. Right. If you have questions about researching, please email me.
Right.
I'm always open for discussions. But I just wrote a synopsis here of kind of what we've talked about. What happened on September 11th in 1857 was unspeakable. For over a century, especially in parts of Utah, the massacre was largely unmentioned or unexplored, a subject that was whispered in corners and off limits in many households. It has only been in the last few decades that people have felt free to discuss and express their opinions openly. A dialogue has been opened between the descendants of the victims, the predators, the representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the Paiute tribal leaders. At times, these conversations have gotten heated and emotional, and this discussion has been halted several times and not gone back to. But this is a discussion that cannot be halted forever. This is still a very emotionally charged subject. Healing does take time, so that if we continue to discuss it, and as these leaders lead in hope and different points of view are explored, the killing of 120 people and the untold emotional suffering of these survivors should always be a highly emotional subject. We want this podcast to honor the dead by representing the facts as we've found them. We are not anti-Mormon. We are pro-history. We don't have a animosity towards the descendants or the predators. For any of those who were involved in the massacre, I know, like I said, I know a descendant personally, and this is not a matter for shaming anybody. This is a historical podcast.
Correct. I like that. Thank you.
No problem. I did a little writing.
So I'm just wondering, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good, and I agree with 100% of that. I'm just thinking that, like the people that went through there during those times.
And saw that, yeah.
Yeah, people were talking, that's...
Yeah. I mean, if it had been now, it'd been posted on Facebook and there'd been people making voyages there to see it.
It doesn't make sense that the church said that John Lee, or whatever his name is, I can't remember.
John D. Lee.
D. Lee, thank you. So they go from, we had nothing to do with it, to he acted on his own.
Yeah.
Till we had something to do with it.
Yeah. And that, like I said, it's recently just been in the last few decades that the leaders of the Mormon Church have said, yes, this is the bloodiest day in Mormon history.
Have you seen the monument?
I've seen pictures of it. I've never been there. One day I will be there.
Yeah, I know. I know somebody that lives in Utah. I'll ask them if they can take a picture of it for me.
Okay, and I've also heard that people that fly over it that take great aerial photos because of the way it's all laid out. Because it actually looks like a basin or a bowl with mountains around it. It's very, very pretty, and it was Mormon land, and they were giving them permission to stay there. So they felt like they had cause because they're on our land, but they gave them permission to be there. It wasn't. It was a little bit off the beaten path. It was later on going towards winter, so they could have taken a northern path, but they took a southern path just because winter was coming.
Right.
So.
And this show, all this came to me through a TV show on Netflix.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to bring that up again.
Yeah.
Is it called American Peril?
American Primeval.
Primeval. That's right. American Primeval. I'm sorry. It is a Netflix documentary. We talked a little bit about it in the first podcast. In many ways, it's very historically correct, but the massacre is downplayed. It's not the storyline of the series.
It's kind of an undertone, just a conversation in passing. And when I heard that, I was like, I got to talk to Amy about this. Yes. And
I also want to say, I said in the first one too, there's an older movie that was made in the 90s called September Dawn, and it's also about that. And it's also, you can go on YouTube and you can watch it, the whole thing, for free. And it is a lot more historically correct. Right. And it does show a lot of the Mormon leaders and the meetings that they had and how they got this all together. Because the Mormons were people, were just people thinking they were doing the right thing.
Right. They were brainwashed.
Yes. And so it wasn't like they were evil either.
So that's insanity then.
Yes. It's a cult. And
right,
so it's,
right.
And you're following a leader. So I've also read so much that if Joseph Smith was alive, he would have condemned them, because they said Joseph Smith would not have, the Mormons say that Joseph Smith would not have been in favor of that. Well, we don't know what he would have been in favor of, but and of course, Brigham Young was his successor after he was killed. So.
And of course, nowadays it's easy to say, well, I wouldn't have done that, but back then the times were different. They thought different. They thought this was the word.
Yes.
And so that's how they, you always wonder how Nazis did.
Why did they do? Yeah.
Because that's how they thought.
Yes. And also, we have to remember Utah Territory, I think it was like this happened in 1857. So like in early 1850s, it wasn't even a territory of the United States. It was still part of Mexico. So there was a treaty that was signed that gave California and Utah and all that as far as territories to the United States. So Brigham Young was the governor appointed by the president as governor of this territory. But everybody just thought, we don't know anything about that. The Mormons are already there. The Mormons left Missouri after Joseph Smith was killed to go and create their own. They wanted to get out of the United States so they wouldn't have to be under their rule. So they were there and thought, well, we're now in Mexican territory, but they weren't there very long before it became a territory of the United States. So
I just wonder.
That's kind of where they were like, then the United States come in and said, okay, now you got to go by our rules, and that's what they didn't want to do. So they were building a Zion is what they called it. And so it's very interesting, but then there's innocence on all parts, of course. Right. These Mormon wives and these children, in my opinion, were abused. Right.
They did what they did out of fear.
They did what they did out of fear. And I read so many stories of women back then because of the multiple wives situation, and that it was practiced within all of Mormonism at the time. The church denounced it, though, maybe 25 years after this happened, and so supposedly it's not part of the Mormon religion now. Just certain sects still do it, certain offshoots of it, but not every Mormon practices polygamy now. But polygamy is very abusive to the women and to the children.
I can imagine.
Just
I couldn't imagine.
Brainwashing, but just a brainwashing situation. And there was things like Joseph Smith had 30 wives. And at the time that 11 of his 30 wives, he had walked into someone else's house and said, God has told me your wife's supposed to be my wife. And he just took them and walked off with them. And when he took them and left them, the mothers had to leave their children. So, that's the type of religion they were in. That's a cult.
Yeah, it is. That's crazy.
There's nothing Christian about that. And the women had no choice.
I just wonder, you've seen 1883, right?
Some of it,
That's an awesome show. I just wonder if they kind of took some of this story from it. Just some of it.
I don't know the story that well.
I'm just wondering if they, because it's about a convoy leaving, and all that.
Yes. Well, that show and the show on Netflix, I'm glad it brings people to the awareness of this.
That's what it did to me.
Yes, because I have lectured on Arkansas history for a decade now, and people go, well, why are you so crazy about, you were born in St. Charles, Missouri. I was born in St. Charles, Missouri. I'm a Yankee. Anyway, but I've lived in Arkansas since I was 9, and I love Arkansas in every way.
I do too.
But what gets to me when I research Arkansas history is the absolute mountains that people moved to get Arkansas in the shape it's in. I want to give a little plug. I do run a business with business partners called Arkansas Haunted Tours. And my particular help write different tours for different towns, but my particular one that I like to participate in every year is Argenta, downtown North Little Rock. And So if you're in Little Rock, across the river is North Little Rock. And people don't realize that across the river in North Little Rock, for 75 years at least of the first years of Little Rock, over there was a wilderness. You know,
right.
they take boats across the river to shoot the bears, you know. And now, so we don't realize that so much of Arkansas was like that. And so I'd like to say these are brave men and women who came to an absolute forest wilderness and carved out these beautiful towns and these beautiful things that we have in Arkansas. But we have caves and we have mountains.
We do, which I still like. It's kind of best of both worlds.
Yes, we have underground springs. One time I'd like to kind of touch on some of the state parks in this area.
Right, and if you go to all of them, you get a certain badge.
You get a certain badge, and there's 52 state parks, but they are the most unique in the whole country. I mean, we have a state park that's you can mine for diamonds, you know.
Right.
Then we have a state park that's just a pavilion in the middle of downtown North Little Rock. I don't know.
I don't understand that one.
You know, there's just different ones.
Right.
And I do have a great love for Arkansas state parks also.
I do too.
Because the history there is amazing. And I may be giving away too much, but I think we need to realize that, you know, FDR, when he was trying to give people work, he employed people to come to Arkansas and build a lot of these parks, like Petit Jean. You go up there, you see the lodges and everything.
Right,
those were all built by labor from that time.
I think that's probably my favorite one is Petit Jean. I'm not a big fan of Mountain Magazine. There's just nothing really to do there that I found.
Yeah.
Other than the big old lodge thing or whatever in Overlook. And that's Petit Jean. There's things to do. There's a car show. There's all kinds of stuff. Ride horses, whatever. I
have to give a plug because I hope my dad listens to this. He's been to the car show over 40 years in a row.
I hadn't been one time.
Oh my goodness! It's a pilgrimage. It's on Father's Day weekend every year.
Oh, okay.
Every year it's on Father's Day weekend. He didn't care that I gave birth to a child on Father's Day. He's like, that's real nice. I got a grandchild. I got to go to the car show. Okay. So he's been up there in all kinds of weather. But the car museum up on Petit Jean is amazing. And they do have wonderful car shows. But, you know, we even have, I live in North Little Rock, so in Little Rock area, we have Pinnacle Mountain in our backyard.
Right.
You know, I have a daughter that climbs Pinnacle Mountain with her dog regularly.
Not me. I couldn't do it on easy.
Oh,
too many steps.
I've done it over the years, but the last time I did it was about 4 years ago, and I thought I don't ever have to do this again.
I couldn't do it. It's too many steps.
It's a lot of steps, then you get to rocks at the top.
Right.
That you have to climb
I felt like it was a Ghostbusters movie. You know, all them steps going up. Like,
it is, but it's right in the middle of Little Rock. It's right there.
Right.
And so we have Mountain Emo, and we have all kinds.
I've been there. I want to go there.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
too.
it's in Dardanelle, I think.
That's in Dardanelle area. Right. But our state parks have wonderful lodges. I just took a trip with my family to Washington State Park, which I'd love to do a whole show on Washington. Washington is a town in Arkansas that is actually a state park, though, and it was the head of the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Like, it was the capital of Arkansas during the Civil War for the Confederates. And the courthouse that they held as their capital is still there, and you can still take tours of it. You can take tours of the homes. There's people that live in this home. There's a mayor.
I'm trying to remember what that's close to.
It's close to Hope. You got to go. You get off the highway at Hope, and you go about 12 miles, and you get to Washington.
Right.
And it is amazing.
Yeah, it's like there's really nothing there, but there's old homes.
There's old homes. There's old high schools. There's churches. There's a blacksmith. But people do live there. There's residents that actually live there. Right. They actually have a mayor. But the courthouse there, the old courthouse, is where you go in, and it's an Arkansas State Park, and you can sign up for tours, and they have different tours. They'll take you on tours of homes or industrial tours. It was my dad's 80th birthday, and so we were taking him, and he wanted to do the industrial tour. Well, we got to go to the print shop, look at all the old printers. We got to go to the blacksmith, and we went to they have a weapons museum with all kinds of guns and
cool.
cannons
all
and everything.
All those old ones back there.
Yeah, all that. And it's all right there, and it's all set up as a town. And so sometimes they have They have people in characters, at different events.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And that kind of thing.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be cool because I'm volunteering to do it.
There you go.
I do that. I've done that around the state in costume. But I love to tell the story. I love to be a tour guide. I love people to say, hey, why does that look like that over there? Well, let me tell you.
That's right. That's right.
I can tell you stories about the cannon on the front yard of the old state house.
Right.
And so I love that, and I love opening these kids' minds that they don't even realize what they're seeing,
right.
and saying, hey, look at this a little closer.
Right.
And so, like, you know me long enough to know that, I tried to do these podcasts and not get so emotionally in charge with everything I do. But that's the way God made me, and I'm okay.
That's right.
I think I'm going to tag myself as the emotional historian.
Nothing wrong with that.
I do come to tears, and
right.
and I'll tell you,
I
have several times, and with these kids, I can just picture their little faces. I can picture them telling the story that I saw my mama shot right in front of me, or I pulled an arrow out of my mama's back.
Or I had to watch some stranger wear my mom's clothes. I mean, these are actually children that said this. So if they said this and we know this 100 years later, what all did they really say? Right.
And so that'll get you grounded. And again, it makes you kind of go, most of us got lights. Most of us got food. Mm-hmm. We got jobs. We got cars. We're not doing so bad.
No, we're not.
We're not doing so bad. So anyway, I do appreciate you, Stacy, because
problem. Thank you.
I do want to put this too. I'm an Arkansas historian, but Stacy is the professional, whatever he is, videographer. Is that what we call you, a videographer?
Jack of all trades,
jack of everything. He produces movies and podcasts, and I am so thankful to have this opportunity and this platform to do this. But SWADE Productions is the professional behind the Arkansas Amy.
Well, thank you.
Storytelling lady.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. This was good.
I'll have to have you on again. I'm glad we did a part 2. And I'll be in touch soon. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the SWADE Pro Show. See you guys on the next episode.